now we're going to look to the future. And over to you, Renée. Welcome.
In short, I have decided to go out on a limb, or maybe I've been put on one by being asked to speak about the future. I've also decided that going out on a limb is kind of the only thing that's really worth my while at this point in history, for reasons that have been quite thoroughly laid out in the previous presentations. And thank you, Janet, as well, for inviting me, knowing I probably would go out on a limb. And also for everyone here for listening and bearing with me as I do explore some sensitive and potentially uncomfortable terrain. I hope that what I have to say is heard as a contribution and in no way as a contradiction. I'm going to talk about, or perhaps talk within, the tension between feminism and spirituality. And that's because Janet asked me to select an article from the Declaration of Women's Sex-Based Rights to talk about, and to do so with a future orientation. So I chose Article 8, which is about the elimination of violence against women. And if I add the future orientation and put this in somewhat plainer language, it means that I'm talking about the feminist vision of a world without rape. And if I put that in positive terms, the vision of a world without rape becomes that of a world restored to love. To me, it's impossible to avoid the fact that I'm talking about a spiritual revolution. Some feminists may bristle at this, understandably. In this day and age, we have become insistent on talking about the world in terms of hard facts, observable realities, and material conditions. And love and spirituality are not only not material, they're also so often used to manipulate women and deny reality that the very words often make us roll our eyes with exasperation. Perhaps our insistence on talking about the material is in part a reaction to all the emotional and spiritual gaslighting that we experience in the world. Actually, I would take out the perhaps. So in spite of this, I still find my conclusion unavoidable. I simply don't believe that what drives feminists ultimately can be reduced to matters of data and evidence and safety and wealth redistribution and even rights. To delve into this, I want to start by explaining what I mean by the word love. I'm not going to define it with any pronouncements, just with a simple story, which I think is ultimately the only way we really can define what we mean by the word love. So last Christmas, I was at home with my parents, and our dog found a little thrush, a fledgling, that had fallen out of its nest and was panting all by itself. And my father brought the bird to me and said that I needed to look after it, which I thought was very sweet. I don't remember what I was doing, but I stopped and decided to just give the bird all my attention until it didn't need me anymore. So I did the whole bit with the shoebox and the little pipette of water and the mashed Weet-Bix, and so forth. And then I watched for when the bird needed rest and put her in the shoebox. And when she was reviving or restless and wanted to come out, she sat on my shoulder eventually by dinner time when I was cooking. And we had some flying practice when I sat on the floor with my hands near the ground and let her hop from one hand to the other. At night, she slept next to me, and I woke up regularly to check on her, but not at the crucial moment, the witching hour, when the sky is darkest and the air coldest, and sleep either eludes us or is very deep. I woke up at about 5 a.m. to see that the little bird was lying on her side because she hadn't made it. And it stung. This story may seem childish, but if it does, I think it's because in adulthood, we simply make ourselves less emotionally available to experiences like this for the sake of sensible self-preservation. I just happened to make myself available and felt it. I wanted the little bird to live. Also, I felt responsible, not for her mortality or her vulnerability, but for being asleep precisely when she most needed help, to give her a chance. In that moment, I felt the pain of allowing harm to come to something precious. And in that moment, realized that I do not think the human heart can ever find it gratifying to hurt something. I saw how antithetical it was to human nature to will harm on another creature. And I realized that I don't believe that anybody does this. In other words, I don't believe nature is the enemy of those who oppose violence. Rather, if somebody causes pain to another person on purpose, it is because of what this achieves inside of the nightmare they are mentally suspended in, not because it can actually bring them joy and truth. People who cause harm on purpose are trapped in something like a virtual video game in which their avatar gains points for cruelty. But this video game is not to be confused with the truth. In reality, there isn't actually any satisfaction in causing harm. Most of us evade responsibility for our part of the world's pain, precisely because it hurts us so much to see it. There was a second thing this little bird taught me that came with her friend's morning chorus. As soon as the birds began singing with first light, I heard how improbable the sound was, how each song came out of a being who had once been so fragile, vulnerable, and tiny as to be implausible. I, with my supposed human superiority, could not keep one bird alive through one night. But outside, these tiny birds are nurtured and nourished into strength by their mothers and a whole network of trees and soil and worms and insects, so that they grow wings that can flap and glide, and they can perch and puff their chests and declare with their melodies that existence is possible because life nurtures life. I could hear the miracle that they fill the morning air with this song. Some people call this thing that the birds sing about love, or God, or the Great Mother. They also say that this love is the only truth, and transformation her primary characteristic. One baby bird can be born and mature and pass away, but life continues to nurture life. This singular absolute, the only truth, is what love is. If the people who say this are correct, it's a big deal for feminists, because it means the world we want really does already exist in the here and now, and it is not reducible to facts. I believe, as the spiritual teachers say, that love is our nature. We emerge from it without asking. We cannot extract ourselves from it, even if we want to. There is no exit. We are woven into this tapestry of life. That is what is meant by love being unconditional. It holds us within it, regardless. When I was first reflecting on this theme of my talk, the vision of a world without rape, I thought about how a collective future goal has to come from somewhere. It is not a coincidence that so many women long for a world without rape. Some of us explicitly, some of us in frustration and anger or despair or resentment for how the world really is, others with deep longing or passionate enthusiasm. Some of us carry this vision implicitly without knowing it, like a weight that makes going through the motions of daily life difficult. We experience what Betty Friedan called the problem with no name. The discovery of feminism is a relief for women who carry this unarticulated longing, precisely because it allows us to see that there is real substance to it, and that the substance is a vision, and that the vision indeed justifies all of the whispering and nagging and knocking with which our emotions call our attention. So what is this force that does this knocking? Because that is the source of our collective goal. What is the force that calls women like this, that doesn't let us off the hook, even when we tell it to go away because we need to make dinner and have work tomorrow and obligations to attend to and ordinary life to live? I think the source is our nature. The vision of a world without rape does not come from us, but through us, from love. Our longing for a world without rape is not a fantasy that some women invented, that a bunch of others decided to go along with. It is not a vision we share by coincidence. It is not that I have a dream of living in a house shaped like a cupcake, and I've been lucky enough to find enough women who share this dream to make it seem plausible. Feminism is not that kind of miracle. The cupcake house is an imaginary fantasy, and its realization would be based on the coincidence of determined and like minds meeting. The feminist vision of a world without rape comes from the heart, not the imagination or the intellect. We do not invent it. We only speak it. It is love's vision, and it is love that knocks on the door of women's hearts to show it to us. And love is not asking us to turn a fantasy we invented into a reality that we construct. In other words, it exists now. So this is where I get to the hard bit, because this is why rape hurts in a way that goes beyond other forms of physical assault. Rape is an attempt not only to injure our physical bodies, but to deny the truth that life nurtures life and that each of us are here to love the world. Feminists identify rape as the cause of human suffering. Rape does not only shape sexual relations because it ties the act of violation to the sex response. Rape sustains the whole human cycle of violence and domination. By associating violation with orgasm and sexual gratification, it allows violence and domination to be fetishized, addictive, and seen as exhilarating, sexy, and macho. This is a big part of the reason that prostitution and pornography are an integral part of the war machine. Porn seduces men to violate against their nature. Feminists see that for domination, cruelty, terror, machismo, and militarism to end, rape must end. Spiritual teachers locate the cause of human suffering elsewhere, in the mind, ego, attachments, identifications, and compulsive thinking. These take us out of the present moment and into a man-made nightmare of separation. But while these two paradigms often appear at odds, they are not. Rape is just the primary tool to make us forget our nature and pull us into the nightmare. A rapist inflicts terror. When women are confronted by rape, our nervous systems protect us by withholding conscious experience of the event and storing that experience in the subconscious. Meanwhile, the woman experiences herself often as drifting or floating away from her body. Sometimes she sees herself as if from above looking down. This is called dissociation. In this moment, there may be two people in the room, but one of them appears to have made himself more than half the equation by compelling the other to leave her body to make room for him. As he makes his intention clear, terror leads the victim to become dissociated from herself as her safety becomes bound up with his emotional state. This creates a kind of false identification of interests. Both people are invested in his emotional state. He wants something and she needs him placated. When he is calm, she can be safe. He has cornered her. Terror has split her heart from her mind. This is what we mean when we say that rape is about dominance, about control. In a rape culture, women who have experienced dissociation never get the message that it is safe to recover conscious experience of the here and now. That is because the culture appears to be one in which men dominate women collectively, just as they do individually in a rape scenario. As Andrea Dawkin wrote, in this male supremacist society, men are defined as aggressive, dominant, powerful. Women are defined as passive, submissive, powerless. Rape occurs when a man who is dominant by definition takes a woman who, according to men and all the organs of their culture, was put on this earth for his use and gratification. Rape, then, is a logical consequence of a system of definitions of what is normative. End quote. Gender, being an institutional expression of the rape dynamic, turns the phenomenon of dissociation that rape establishes into a social and cultural reality. The world appears to belong to the rapist, who owns women. Women feel disconnected from our bodies, ourselves, other women, belonging, and love. We want to make men content. When they are happy, we feel more at ease, safer. The culture calls this kindness, selflessness, and love. Dawkin knew that gender is a lie. Feminists know that gender is a lie, a false story about male dominance and female submission, and a false story about what love is, and what selflessness is, and what freedom is. We see that gender is a reality at the same time as it is not a truth. It is a man-made nightmare that breeds separation. Rape is gender in action, a lie in action. Like gender, it is a reality, but not a truth. The pain of it is the pain of experiencing a lie in action, the nightmare of separation that rape is designed to lure us into. Men are not gods. They do not have the power to change what is true, to sever the ties between women and our bodies, women and earth. They do not have the power either to destroy love, nor the capacity to disconnect us from it. Rape does not actually destroy love or change its nature, or separate women from the tapestry nature weaves that the birds sing about. Even death cannot extract us from that vast and intricate network of relationships, of nourishment and giving that we owe our existence to. Rape does not actually sever us from the wholeness of life any more than invasive surgery can change our sex or turn us into a different person. It does not isolate us from the truth of love that we are inextricably part of. It cannot do this, but it does appear to. There is perhaps no lie more convincing, more persuasive than the lie of rape, which tells us the world is cruel and unfeeling, that we are alone in it, and that love is a naive fantasy. Rape is convincing. It does not persuade through logic, but through pain. pain so severe it appears to undermine the truth that love is why we are here. But the truth remains. The rapist himself will one day go underground to feed the worms who feed the birds. That is what the spiritual teachers call grace. Love does not discriminate. Mother Nature is neither vengeful nor a sadist, and we cannot make her so. Life continues, nature continues, love continues. Plants make oxygen, clouds bring rain, mother birds nurse their babies. If there comes a time when air, water, and food are no longer available to us, it will not be because love ended. It will not be nature's punishment. It seems to me that women of all political, religious, and spiritual persuasions hear the call to return to love in our blood and bones. I believe that more than anything, we are here to answer that call. I believe that doing so is as important as it feels, because women's awakening to our own nature and out of the nightmare is a prerequisite to social transformation, not a hoped-for consequence of it. The purpose of rape is to lure us away from the truth that is love and to sustain the nightmare of separation. If that is the basis of our social problems, which I think it is, then a world restored to love is as much a feminist as a spiritual vision. Yes, the spiritually inclined could afford to listen to women more, rather than use ideas about impermanence and indeterminacy to, very selectively, deny that women exist, that sex exists, that women's heartbreak is anything but imaginary, and that rape is a central problem. At the same time, feminists may take much more sustenance from the spiritual literature and practices that call us than we have allowed ourselves to. Many women leave formal religions and dismiss spiritual ideas as we learn to see how they can be used to promote dissociation and misogyny. As we do this and commit to naming the observable facts of our lives, we can almost come to feel that feminism and spirituality are at odds, that spirituality is blinding and politically irresponsible. Yet social transformation requires women's healing, a return to what is true here and now beyond our man-made reality, the collective nightmare. Even the most distorted religious traditions and New Age ideas can contain wisdom that we sorely need. It is possible to identify the patriarchal distortions and overtones of spiritual and religious teachings, whilst remaining open to the deeper wisdom they can offer. Radical feminists often find ourselves explaining to people what the word radical means, that it comes from a Latin word meaning to go to the root. We call ourselves radical not because of our militancy necessarily, sometimes, or because we are drawn to extremes, but because we don't believe in band-aid solutions to persistent social problems. We want to go to the root and address the problems there. So what does it mean for feminism that the root of our problem in a rape culture is a lie, but not a lie in the form of an intellectual idea we are sold through false reasoning, but in the form of an experience of the world, a disconnection from life that we are brought to through pain and terror? If this is the root of the problem, does this not mean we need to rethink the effort we invest in reasoning with people whose problem is not intellectual? Does it not mean that the ultimate truth we stand for is not material? Does it not mean we need to spend time reflecting on what love is to us, irrespective of what the culture says that it is? and to rethink the emphasis we place on collective action, even at the expense of individual healing. Does the most effective action not come from a healing heart? How can a group of people trapped in a state of dissociation restore the world to love? Is it right to call on traumatized people to act without fear? Must women not restore ourselves to love in order to act fearlessly? Is this not the most important thing? Is this not what Mother Earth herself yearns for, not just outside our window, but through and within us? Is it not true also that it is not us, our limited individual identities, who transform the world? Is it not love that transforms? Do we really hope to transform the world according to our goal through cumulative acts of will? Is it not wiser and more practical to restore ourselves to love, to orient ourselves in that direction, and so allow love to transform the world, since that is what love inexhaustibly does? I realize that my talk will probably prompt more questions and reservations than I have asked here, that it may even appear vague. But I thank you for listening with what Mary Daly called your deep inner ear, not just the material outer ones.